And I'm delighted to welcome our two guests here today, one of whom you recognize from the screen just a moment ago, and Michael Rauch, who is the executive producer. So quickly, Michael has written, produced, and directed for numerous television series, including creating and producing Love Monkey on CBS, as well as Royal Pains, Beautiful People, and Life is Wild. Roush wrote and directed the independent feature film In the Weeds, starring Ellen Pompeo, Bridget Moynihan, Molly Ringwald, and Eric Bogosian. Is that what it is?
Yes.
There we go. And directed and produced the filmed version of Bogosian's off-Broadway show for IFC, Wake Up and Smell the Coffee. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for being here with us. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Applause. And now to introduce our star, Alan. Alan Cumming is, as many of you know, a wildly accomplished performer in film, in television, in theater, an author as well, whose work includes 7 seasons as Eli Gold on The Good Wife, for which he won an Emmy. Yes, Good Wife fans in here.
Didn't win an Emmy.
You got nominated for 3.
Yeah, didn't win.
Someone's got your bio wrong.
I won an Emmy for someone else. But you should Google that.
Google got it wrong. He's also appeared on Sex and the City, Frasier, The L Word, a personal favorite, Web Therapy and Tin Man, PBS's Master Mystery, The Smurfs also. The list really goes on and on and on. In theater, Alan has gained stateside notoriety for the defining role of the MC in Cabaret, for which you did win a Tony. A Drama Desk Award, Outer Critics Circle Award, Theater World Award, New York Press Award, and many, many others. The list really goes on. I had to actually cut this down because it would really be too long. We'd be sitting here forever. Although his acting credits do extend back more than 3 decades.
That was unnecessary.
More than a decade and a half plus. So we're really delighted to have both of them here to talk about Instinct and this wonderful show that you have both created. So I had to start with a burning question for you both, which is, why did Dr. Dylan Reinhart have to be American? I'm so curious. I mean, I get the CIA background, but...
I mean, because he was American in the book.
In the James Patterson
book
novel.
that's based on. I mean, he's in the CIA. He was in the CIA. There's not many Scottish. Do you mean, why is he not Scottish?
Well, I mean, I'm curious. Was it written that way because you really wanted to do the American accent? Yeah.
No, I don't take jobs just so I can do the American accent. I tend to just play someone, and if they have an accent, I try and do the one that they should. But I mean, I think he seems to me a sort of a very much, from my non-American, being born outside of America, perspective, he seems a very American type. He's kind of a East Coast, kind of, white bread. He was in the CIA. His father was in the CIA. He's a kind of, accomplished, educated, privileged white American. So I think for me not to sound like that would be wrong.
Fair.
What do you think, Michael Rauch?
I think that's all correct, Alan Cumming.
Thank you.
I would also say, I think, which you may get to, this being the first network broadcast hour-long with a gay lead, which is amazing. I think to then have that person also have an accent, maybe loading a lot onto the character for an American audience.
Fair.
Not in a bad way, but maybe
Can
not
I also
the best
say
way.
that I always think it's hilarious when people say that someone doesn't have an accent. He has an American accent.
No, he doesn't.
Yes.
No, no accent. But
So funny. People say, I don't have an accent. I'm like, you sound like an American. Isn't that
Alan,
an interesting thing about the way Americans think about themselves?
Alan is Scottish, playing an American. Daniel Ings, who plays Andy, Alan's husband, is British, playing an American. And Boyana, who plays Detective Lizzie Needham, is Serbian Australian, playing an American. So we have these incredible American accents, and the director yells "cut," and it's a free-for-all. There's just all these different things going on. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Exactly why we asked the question. See, we wanted to know all these behind the scenes.
That's right.
What's
Yes.
going on? So, Michael, we're fortunate to have you here to be able to discuss also the origins of the show. So it was based on a book by James Patterson. What brought you both into wanting to turn this into a TV series?
For me, it was two things. One is I had never done a crime show before. I had to deal with CBS, and they sent me the book. I had never read a James Patterson book before. I didn't know about the lead character being gay. I really enjoyed the book. I didn't want to do a show, though, that had nothing new in it. And when I found out that Dylan was, in fact, gay, it totally changed my perspective on an interest in wanting to do a show like this. And then I heard that Alan was interested. And that, for me, was I'm in 100%. I was, and still am, an enormous fan of his, despite his anti-Americanism. And there was no one else, like all of a sudden, the whole thing just jumped off the page, and it felt like this is a guy I want to write for. So we had coffee and talked about the book and the show and our ideas, and it felt very much like we were on the same page.
Did you encounter any challenges in, we have lots of conversations internally about representations of LGBTQ people and creating narratives around the LGBTQ experience. Did you have any challenges navigating that? I mean, I understand, Alan, also that you are an EP on the show. So did you work on that together? Did you confront any difficulties in it's not always easy to write for a very sort of particular experience that you may or may not.
Well, I think actually what really attracted me was one of the things was the way that in the book, Dylan's gay and has a husband. It's not something we have actually invented or tried to add to it. That was what the story was in the James Patterson book. And what I loved about it in the book, which we weren't able to do in the show, was that I wonder if they've changed that now. They've got the new version of the book. Because in the book, it was called, I think his husband was called Tracy, was it?
Yes.
And because it's a literary thing as well, you don't see. So they have this reveal when he's talking about Tracy, and then you think it's a woman, and then you realise it's a man. So, but I actually really like the fact that because it kind of really annoys me that on certainly on network television, if not in all across the board, if there is a gay character, it's about their gayness. Their whole story is about is gay, and usually in quite a sort of they've got problems, or they're HIV positive, or they're what I mean. There's it's not only is it not very positive, it's actually completely about your sexuality rather than So I find what was really refreshing about this, and frankly something I did not expect from a James Patterson novel nor a CBS series, is a gay character, two gay characters. Who, and especially me, really his gayness is like the fifth thing that you mention in the list of things about him. That in itself is really refreshing to me. And also that you see a relationship that is a happy, stable, same-sex relationship. That's unusual. And both those things were really important to me and why I wanted to do it. And so, but it wasn't really anything we did. I mean, obviously, as ongoing, it's something that we're being very conscious of, and we're glad I've been very involved in terms of helping the writers and things like that. And we're actually doing a screening with them tomorrow. But I actually has really it's it's James Patterson who was the person who kind of had it, and kind of based on he was roommates at college with this guy who's Bill, who's gay, and they've been lifelong friends and so on. And I think actually Dylan is the name of Bill's daughter.
Yeah. So
there's all these little connections that he used it from his own experience, which is always the best way to do things, I think.
That's great. It is really, I can speak on behalf of a lot of members of our community that it is extraordinarily refreshing to see a show in which there is a gay male lead, and exactly as you say, that it's not revolving around some issue to do with their sexuality or struggles with their family. It's sort
and
of
I liked the sort of confoundingness of it, like he drives a motorbike, like a middle-aged sort of dandy, fuddy-duddy gay guy who drives a motorbike. I think I love that already.
Yeah, I was going to ask, actually, that was one of the questions later on, is you're weaving together so many different sort of characteristics within the same character. It's nerdy, intelligent professor who has multiple PhDs, slight sort of CIA badass, warm, loving husband, clearly in a stable relationship. those things are not often woven together. So how did you sort of prepare to imagine this character as you were getting into it and weaving all those pieces together?
Well, in a way, that's the biggest challenge, because most sort of television things, there's one sort of sentence hook to what your character or even the whole show is about, actually. And so to have so many seemingly disparate characteristics in one person was both challenging but also attractive to me, because potentially I could be doing this for a long time, and I wanted to. It's actually lovely to think there's so many areas of him that we can explore. And I even think there's funny things, like there's an episode where we were at this farm, because there's some, obviously some murders happening, and there's a lady comes with a chicken, and she thinks that I've come to pick up a chicken, so she hands me this live chicken, and I go, oh, thank you, and I sort of say, oh, it's a blah blah, whatever kind it is, and I say, oh yes, I used to rear these in Egypt, and we just move on. And I love the thing, I want to go, when was he in Egypt? What was he doing rearing chickens? So it's actually a really great sort of, like a little, do you call it in America pick and mix, like a lucky bag? Do you call them?
Yes.
Like there's all these characteristics in a sort of lucky bag of Dylan that I actually look forward to exploring. But also it is kind of, that's the challenge as well, is to try and make it like one whole person. But I have a lot of different facets.
Yeah.
Do you want to know about them?
Yes, please.
I'm not a natural blonde.
Damn, fooled us all. Actually, your career has really spanned a number of different genres, and you've played a variety of different characters. So, everything from, we've seen you in action films, X-Men, Goldeneye, to theater and cabaret. How do you choose each of these roles? How do you prepare for them? What is your process for getting into so many different headspaces as you're moving from?
Well, first of all, I have to confess, I really don't like the word process. I always say I'm not a cheese, I have no process, when people ask me about acting, because I feel like that's the antithesis of of how you do maneuver those things. If you think about it as a process, then it's sort of like a formula. And actually, like real people, we don't, we're all sort of idiosyncratic and have no kind of logic almost. So I always think of it, I think of acting as just like being a child and playing. And so you obviously take all the different characteristics and you take all the skills that you picked up, but you just try and it's just trying to be someone else and meaning it. It's not a difficult concept. Some people are better at it than others. But I think of acting like, being double jointed or something. Some people are double jointed, or riding a unicycle. Some people can do it, some people can't. And you can learn to ride a unicycle, but you might not be that good. Anyway, but what I do, what I do from in terms of what I'm attracted to in a role, there's usually just one thing. Like with this, it was the variety of facets to the character. Then it was also like when I met with Michael and I saw his intellect and wit, and we really got on, as he said. And that was, it's a personality thing as well. Sometimes it's just, I've just done a thing that I shot because it was sort of a childhood fantasy of mine to do it. And, other times it's like, oh, I'd like to go to this country, or I'd like to work with this person, or I'd like to earn this money. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's different things, and you just have to, balance everything to make the life that works for you.
I think telling a room of Googlers that there's no logic or process, we have no idea what you're talking about. Everything has to be written down in a spreadsheet. What are you talking about? We have process docs.
Oh, really do.
Yeah.
Maybe I should come and give you a seminar on lack of process.
That would be great. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I actually
clear
did like
calendars.
I always hate talking about acting, but then the New York Public Library conned me a couple of years ago into doing this thing, and an evening of talking about acting. So I called it I Am Not a Cheese, I Have No Process, Alan Cumming on Acting. And I had a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, it was all and a video would come on and everything like that.
Except hopefully when you come here, it'll be Google Slides.
Oh, Google Slides,
yeah.
I'm all for that. Yeah. No, I loved it. I actually really liked that. I loved having. I like playing at that, but I don't actually. If that's the way you function, I think it's good to have order around you. I have very good order and really great people, some of whom are here today, who help me have the life I want to live. But actually, at the centre of it, I think you've got to be a little more carefree.
We will try to be carefree, Googlers. We'll try. So for the folks in the room who are involved in their own LGBTQ activism, can you talk a little bit about the kinds of campaigns that you've become involved in? I know there's sort of probably some Googlers in the room know the work that you've done performing a duet with Liza Minnelli to raise funds for Broadway Cares,
Yes.
which is in service of HIV. But
not just, it's actually a much bigger, wider thing than, I mean, Broadway Cares is, sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
no,
it's actually, it was Broadway Cares / Equity Fights AIDS. They kind of combine, but actually they have this breast cancer place. I mean, it's actually, and helps people when they are homeless and things. It's a really great sort of umbrella. It's interesting actually when you see how organisations sort of transmogrify according to their circumstances, that it started off, obviously it's very much about a grassroots thing about people who were, the theatre community was devastated by AIDS and HIV. And then when that kind of got more manageable, it kind of diversified, as it were. And so I think it's a great organisation though because of that. It's moved with the times and it's changed its whole sort of, opened up its areas of who it can help. But also the other things I do, like I'm an ambassador for the Hedrick Martin Institute, which is a really great organisation that helps a lot of homeless LGBTQ people, young people. I do a lot of things with young people. I'm, the Trevor Project I've done stuff with, and a lot of my big thing is that I think it's bad enough, it's hard enough being queer in this country, and especially right now. I mean, I think that's what's so amazing about, it's not a good time to be gay in this country. The Trump and this administration are peeling back rights in various states, and also just by his silence, he is condoning so much violence and persecution against gay people all over the place. And so it's more scary to be gay now than it has been for many, many years in this country. So the fact that there's going to be a positive depiction of some gay people on a network television is even more special and necessary. So I'm actually even more happy that that's happening. But so I think it's hard enough at any time in this country to be queer, but let alone if you are in a place of abuse, or if you're homeless, or if you're trying to educate yourself to get out of a certain situation. So I feel a great sort of personal hoping to rewrite or rebalance the world by helping out when I can and those sorts of things. And then on broader issues as well, I've kind of done some other stuff. But that's really what I feel I can be most effective.
Next question actually for both of you on that same topic, which is that you've both been in the entertainment industry for quite a while. And for those of us who are not familiar with that space, we've watched, I think, collectively as a nation, collectively as a world, attitudes about LGBTQ people shifting. How have you seen that shift, working in this space in the entertainment industry over the last several years, given that there are ups and downs? I'm curious how you've seen that shift happen. Is it easier to put on a show that has the first gay male lead on network television, or?
In terms of this show, it could not have been easier. CBS as a network and CBS Studios were 100% supportive from the pitch. Alan and I wanted to pitch the show, and I don't think we got one note until we finished the season about the character sexuality or the depiction of Dylan and Andy and their life. I think it's going to be really interesting when we start airing on Sunday to see if there's an audience response about Dylan's sexuality and what it is. If it's supportive, if it's not. As Alan was saying, given the current government's silence and behavior towards marginalizing people, I don't know what to expect. I have faith in our audience, so I hope that people love the show and kind of shrug at they don't care that Dylan is gay or not gay. But I think we have worked very hard in the writers' room and on set, and as Alan said with GLAAD, to make sure that the depiction of the marriage and of the character are not just accurate, respectful, and authentic. And as Alan had said, this isn't a show about a gay CIA working with a cop. It's a show about an ex-CIA guy working with a cop who happens to be gay. and it's just a part of the storytelling. And just like in any crime show or medical show, sometimes you follow the lead home and meet their partner, and that's what we do here. And the storytelling is neither more dramatic or less dramatic because of it. So it's a long way to your answer, but I think in this sense there was no pressure at all. And so I think with streaming and premium cable now, there's so much more representation of all different types of people that it's kind of taking the pressure off the networks to be able to do it.
And I think it's an interesting thing that about the people who make television and film and are I would say more likely not to be supporters of the current administration's stance or lack of stance or their silence on certain things happening in different states, various rights being pulled back. So it's actually a funny time when, in a way, maybe we are not representing a lot of the population's opinions, but that's because those opinions have, and I think sometimes you have to be a little more, you're not just a cipher. You have to actually say, I think this is right and good, and we're going to represent that rather than what some parts of the population might negative things that they might be feeling in terms of how the rest of the country thinks. So I don't know. I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting for a network like CBS to be launching a show that essentially in with this topic is kind of potentially controversial or unusual in a time where the country is kind of going a little backwards in terms of its openness and diversity. But I think that's all the more reason to do it. And I'm very excited about that. And I think whatever happens, it's going to be a really interesting, telling time for who we are.
And CBS is, of all the networks, I think they've taken the most flack for a lack of diversity. So, they have been incredibly supportive and excited about the storytelling, and not just with Dylan, but the mayor, as you guys saw, is an Indian American. The kind of top cop is also diverse in the show. So it's trying to represent the real world, and that people in power aren't just white men.
It's the diversity show.
Yeah.
Diversity show. Well, with you both as executive producers, again, for those of us who are less familiar with the ins and outs of filming a show, what creative control does that give you over some of these characters? You have...
Oh, well, he gets most creative control because he's in the writer's room making them up. Yeah.
Perfect.
Alan comes in with a monocle and a stick when we're not shooting. Yeah. No, this show, like pretty much every show, you have incredible creative control to a certain point. And if there are issues, whether it's with the studio or the network, in terms of characters, they'll give you notes and you try to adjust the ones you agree with. But personally, I really collaborate with the actors, and especially the leads, and especially someone as talented and smart as Alan, because there's a certain point where their understanding of the character is equal to, and sometimes surpasses, the writers, because they're playing this person every day. And so there are times that Alan is very respectful of the words, but also if he or Boyana say, I have a problem with this, or this doesn't seem right to me, they're usually, as your ego, you resist it in the beginning, and then 5 seconds later you realize they're right, and you can figure out something that works for everyone, and it always makes the work better.
And I think it's an interesting thing that for me being an executive producer, it means that I have access to lots of information that I probably wouldn't never have had just as an actor, which is also getting the scripts early and being able to sort of make comments earlier on than I would have been able to had I just got them when they were like the production draft, and that's been fascinating. And also just like seeing cuts of it early on, and I mean it's quite a lot of a lot of cuts, so there's a lot of watching. But that's actually good. But for me, actually, the thing that I like most about having a bit more power in terms of my position in the show is just actually thinking. My two areas of executive producing this are really we've got to make sure we work long hours when we do this, but let's be very respectful and try and get people to have some semblance of a home life, like the crew. Let's try and make sure that we don't mucker about, and if we have directors who are not prepared and are wasting time, then we should give them a kick in the pants or not ask them back. Those sorts of things are really important to me, because you work incredibly hard and you have a great group of people, but you've got to make them feel good about coming to work and make them feel that they're respected. So that was very important. And the other area was the catering, because as a vegan, I remember having a conversation saying, salad is not a vegan option. It's salad. And so I had a chat with the producer, and I remember saying, it's 20, she said, we can bring you food in from, I was like, I don't want that. This is 2017, it's New York City, there's 150 people on the crew. There's a large percentage are going to be vegetarian or vegan. They need to have more than just fucking salad. So things changed, and it was really great. We have vegan options. And what's so funny about it is that, I'll be walking to sets, and there's all the trucks and all the things, and some Teamsters, and a Teamster will come around going, Alan, hey, morning, I just wanted to, thanks for the vegan options. Yeah. And there's all these kind of closeted vegans coming out of the closet now, feeling they're able to wave their vegan flag because there's actually things they can eat.
You think that New York would be very friendly to vegans?
Yes.
New Yorkers love vegans.
Vegan power.
Vegan power. Does this change your relationship to developing the character? Since you're saying that you have a little bit more time to think over the script, you have a little bit more. Have you EP'd on shows previously? And if not, then how does that change your relationship to actually acting?
Well, I guess I haven't done it. I've done produced films and things like that I've been in, but and the good thing about it is, and how it might change, is that you actually have the material for a longer time. And I'm someone that I don't really do lots of preparation unless it's I've got to learn some skill or anything. In this, I chatted to a few former CIA operatives, and because that was I can understand what it's like to be a lecturer, I can understand what it's like to be a writer, but I don't know many spies. So it was really fascinating to talk to people that were, and actually be able to ask them really, sometimes to them, peculiar questions, but just, I can't imagine it. So that was what I did. But when you have the information for longer, the material for longer, for me, it's just kind of, I feel like it's just sort of a seeping in kind of thing. Like often I let things ruminate, and then, when you come to do them, you realize you've actually made quite strong decisions about things without actually having been active about that. I feel it's like kind of by osmosis. So the longer you get it, the more ingrained it gets. So I like that part of it, just having more access to the material for longer. And then, of course, they do rewrites and change it all. And that.
Of course.
Showbiz.
So speaking of the other characters who are in the show around you, working with you, did you develop those characters, understanding that it's based upon the novel, but this particular show version of those characters, did you develop those with those particular actors in mind? Or?
No, not at all. In fact, this is the only time for me I've ever written a show knowing who the lead was going to be.
Interesting.
Which was an incredible experience, because it enabled me, in terms of writing the pilot, to write specifically to Alan, and as a fan of his, to how I imagined he would be playing the role. Every other part was written before we had Whoopi Goldberg or Boyana or Naveen or Sharon. So, part of what you do in a writer's room, especially in the first season, is after the first couple episodes, you get a sense of the actors' rhythms and how they do certain things, and you try to write to that, so that as they're discovering the characters, you're discovering it with them.
Wanted to ask you, as I'm watching the clock and seeing that we're going to need to leave time for everyone to be able to ask questions, I wanted to quickly ask you about your books. So you've written a couple of books. You've written Tommy's Tale, You Gotta Get Bigger Dreams, Not My Father's Son, which became a #1 New York Times bestseller. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And
I've done a kids book as well called The Adventures of Honey and Leon.
So
illustrated by my husband.
Interesting. We're going to have to check
Beautifully
that out.
illustrated by your husband, yeah.
And there's a second one coming.
What is the children's book about?
Our dogs who died. Well, I mean, it's about our dogs.
Oh, no.
Who died. Not about dead dogs.
It's a great children's book.
The death part is not in the book. Okay.
Although when we were doing the press thing for it coming out, there was two hilarious things that happened. We had to go. I did all the stuff like this, but then I also went to some sort of. There's a thing I had to go to these sort of moms influencer bloggers, moms bloggers and things like that. I was like, what? And someone said, and there's all these kids there and things, and I just remember thinking, oh, I hope they don't ask where Honey and Leon are, the kids, because Honey and Leon are dead. And one of them did, and I was, oh, they can't be here today because they're dead. But the other thing was, it was an interesting sort of kind of, for me, a little bit of a wake-up thing about where I am and Grant, my husband, is in terms of our lives, because someone said, where did you do this thing? And I went, well, it was this place. It was sort of like a doggy daycare, but it had kids. And someone said, so you mean a daycare? Oh, yeah. So my life is so not about children. But yes, that's what. So I've written. So we wrote one, and it's about two dogs who live in the East Village with their two dads. So there's a little bit of a queer message there. And the dads travel so much, and the dogs don't like it because they can't protect them. So they decide to go in disguise and follow them around the world. So that's that. And then the second one is coming out next year. Grant's just finishing it. They go to Scotland. It's called the first one's called The Adventures of Honey and Leon, and this one's called Honey and Leon Take the High Road, and they go to Scotland.
Oh. So what was it that compelled you to move from acting in theater and in film and in television to writing? What compelled you particularly for those personal books that you?
Well, it's two things. It wasn't really a move. I've always written. I wrote that novel in like 2002. But before that, I've written screenplays and material for I used to do a stand-up comedy thing with another guy. I've written a lot of stuff. I've always written. But I sort of wanted to write a novel about how I felt. In a way, the novel is actually a very thinly veiled memoir of where I was at the time and then, of course, I wrote the memoir, Not My Father's Son. I actually feel it's more of a. It's not just about books. It's about a thing like with also that movie I did, The Anniversary Party, and about various other things I've done, where I feel when you get well known and people know, people, there's a thing that happens where you actually realize that people are as interested, if perhaps not more interested, in you as a person as they are in your work. And that's something that you have to kind of, I feel, own, take responsibility for, and then hopefully use it in a way that can actually make your art, your work better. And so I feel that there's various things that I've done in my career that I feel, which I've used my real life and things and also in a way played with the audience's perception of who I am. And those make, I think, better connections between, because I think it's an interesting thing that when you look at a screen and you see, or a stage, and you see people, there's some people you want to look at more. And I think that's another thing you have to try and understand, make sense of when you're the person being looked at. What is it? And I feel it's authenticity. That's what people respond to. So for me, my books and things like that are kind of a taking that kind of authenticity to another genre, but also another level of being really, really open. And it's actually a very liberating thing to do, that when you've completely told everyone everything there is really to know about you in some areas of your life, it's actually very liberating. And then when also, with Not My Father's Son, that was incredible to realise I had inadvertently helped lots of people deal with things in their life about abuse and stuff like that. So, but really in a I suppose a selfish way, it's actually about this kind of long, several decades thing I've got about the work I think works best in a certain way of being the most connecting with an audience and the most revealing is work that's actually been more about my life.
I want to make sure that I leave enough time to open it up.
You left out one thing that he does.
I did?
Yes, because after he writes and gives awards and gets awards and then works 13-hour days on set, instead of sleeping, he goes to Club Cumming, which is a nightclub that Alan opened down in the East Village.
Yeah. And I bartends and dances and sings till like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then gets picked up at 4 to come back to set. And yes, I was very good.
Yes, no, you were great. I don't know how you do it. It's unbelievable.
I didn't go lots. I only went on Fridays, or if I had a morning.
That's what he says. And then I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd go on Instagram, and there'd be shots of him like with a mic in his hand. Yeah.
But I actually, this is a terrible thing to say, but most people I know who are actors have been a barman or a waiter or a barman or something. And I've never done that. I've always just been an actor. And I've actually secretly yearned to be a bar. and now I can because I own a bar. It's so great. And also, I don't have to be particularly good either because I just.
No, you made me a delicious drink.
Yeah. But there's a little card like that on the bar which has got the house special drinks, and sometimes people ask for them. I'm like, yes, sure, I can get you that. And I have to kind of take the thing and look at the ingredients, just do it. But I'm a kind of a sloppy but heavy-handed barman, so people don't mind.
I feel like that's a good reason for all of us to go.
Yes,
no? Right?
come on down.
It's a great club, yeah.
It's such fun.
That's
Actually,
fantastic.
I think I include Club Cumming in that list of things that I was just talking about. That I do feel, I know this sounds funny, but I do feel it's my greatest creative achievement, because I've actually wanted a spirit and a mood. I imagined a spirit and a mood of a place to happen, and it happened because I kind of like put the word out and kind of created it in the ether in a way. And I sort of, obviously, I wrote things about how I wanted it to be, and I kind of gave interviews and things like that. But it's actually that spirit has really happened, and it's a place of people of all ages and genders and sexualities, and there's performance and there's dance and it's sexy, but it's kind of inclusive in all sorts of ways, but just kindness is the biggest. Kindness and no judgment are the kind of, like we did a screening of Spice World, the movie, 20th anniversary of Spice World, the movie, which I have a leading role.
Which
thank
you were in, yes.
And so it was a 20th anniversary. We had a screening of that, and we had a Spice come dressed as your favourite Spice Girl competition. So I was judging it, a little drunk, and the first boy there was a couple of baby Spices, and the first boy that did it. And it's a tiny little stage, and I said, so where are you on the baby spice spectrum? And he said something mean about the other baby spice person. And the audience were all about, and I went, oh gosh, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the stage now. And he was like, what? I went, that did not meet the level of kindness that is expected at Club Cumming, and so you're disqualified from the competition. He was like, are you serious? I went, yes, please leave the stage. And everyone cheered, and then what was great was, well, it wasn't great, but he went off stage and fell off and cut his knee. And so Daniel, my partner in the bar, looked up and he went, Spice Karma. But then everyone was putting vodka on his knee, and this boy dressed as Baby Spice was getting wasting vodka on his knee. But I just, like, that's really important to me. I don't want that bad energy in my bar. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just like, no. And that's the staff know that too, that, you know, if any of us who run it hear of, being mean to customers or just being mean in general, I mean, it's not, and I don't mean you to be like a robot. I mean, just actually be kind, you know? So that's very important to me.
Last question is, do you sleep ever?
I do.
Do you like eat or take breaks?
I do
or
actually
it's
sleep.
Just work around the clock?
No, I have a lot going on, but I'm very focused. I think that's the thing. I really focus on where I am, what I'm doing, and then I focus on fun as well, you know. And I'm a good napper. I think you've got to be, to do what I do, you've got to be a good napper.
That's key.
And I can be shooting a scene, and there'll be like 20 minutes of lighting. I'll go up and sleep for 15 of those minutes.
Googlers know all about that. We have nap pods here, and
I would like to see one of those.
Yeah,
I
we'll
heard
take you to see
tell
one
of your
afterwards.
pods.
Definitely, it's very important when you've been doing a long stretch of coding and you just need
And
a
also
quick little.
Right. I also think I saw, like, you've got the juice bar, you've got the rest, you've got all these things. It's obviously just like to lure you to stay here for as long as possible. Is that what it?
Yeah, of course.
So you can actually
Naturally.
sleep here as well.
Right.
Is there a laundrette? Should get a laundrette.
No, but I'm sure there's one
And
nearby.
they should have like a bodega, a badugula. I'm on a roll, Michael.
So let's open it up to all of you to ask questions. Please go up to the mics on either side of the room so that we can capture you and hear you properly. You want to line up? Hi.
Hi. Thanks for being here. Alan, I loved your performance back in 2013 in Macbeth at the Barrymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the favorite live performances I've seen you do, where you played like literally everyone in Macbeth. It was quite astounding. I have a question about the plot in the pilot that we just saw. I was curious as to how did you decide when and how you revealed that you're a former CIA agent? Because I thought it was very interesting, kind of the timing of when you said it, sort of like nonchalant. But I was curious as to why it was revealed like in the pilot and why not like buried for a later episode.
I guess because I mean, well, it'd be more you to the question. I mean, my idea, well, that's what I think, is that it's actually quite important in terms of who he is, that he's got that background that is sort of very different to what you might think on the initial impression of him. So it's kind of got, and also I mean, a lot of the time, as will come clear as the series goes on, a lot of the time Naveen's character helps him out with getting information that might not be available to the NYPD, and so that becomes his whole CIA background becomes kind of an issue in terms of how he can work with Bojana. But
it also, I think, for him to work with the homicide division of the NYPD, for the audience to know that he's got a background in chasing bad guys, helps make it a lot more credible.
Yeah, he's not just
and I don't want to rewrite your question, but I was really hoping you were going to say, you know, I saw you do Macbeth in 2013. It was really incredible. Would you do it now, please?
Yeah, we want the Lady Macbeth soliloquy. I won't hear that.
Come, you spirits, attend on mortal thoughts. Unsex me here and fill me from the top to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Something my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse that even some compunctious nature shake my fell purpose. Come, thick night, and pall me in the dunnest smoke of hell. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Who was the cartoon character over the shoulder that you did? You know, in that movie?
In what movie?
You were like, because I want you to do that now.
Wait.
After Macbeth. You did a cartoon, you know, I'll remember it. On to the next question.
On my shoulder?
It was so funny. No, it was in a movie.
Oh, The Great Gazoo.
Great Gazoo, yes. I'm going to go from Lady Macbeth to The Great Gazoo. Yeah.
What was he
The
saying?
range of Alan Cumming.
Yeah, what was it again? Like dum-dums. Stop it, dum-dums, yeah. A range.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you both for being here. My question is actually very much related to the previous one, but I'll go one step further. So the pilot introduces the lead character as this mysterious guy, but paradoxically we see a lot of him. A lot about his life. We know that he works for the CIA, and we also know that he's happily married to a man, which I feel like in a regular TV show that fact would stay hidden for a bit longer. So is the lead character really that mysterious? How much more should we expect from the next episodes? I must admit that I haven't read the novel, so I'll ask.
One in every 17 readers in America has, but
yes.
I think it's a pilot. You've got to say as much as you can about the characters to get people interested. You know what I mean? It's not so he's not that mysterious. Really, you know a lot about him, but that's what pilots are. That's how you. Otherwise, you might not. You've got to fling stuff at the audience a bit, and then. But the thing I think, so I guess we do know all the broad, in a broad way, all his facets. But actually, I was saying that thing about the hen. That's for me, it's hilarious. I suddenly get a script and go, oh, I was once in Hong Kong doing a blah blah. That part of it, I think, is there's much more, and there's also actually more about his family that. You don't know yet. There's, the good thing about having so many different facets, even though you kind of show your card a little, is that there's a wider or a bigger suit to go to. So, but yeah, I think that his mystery is in that he's got hidden depths.
All right.
Would you say, Michael?
I agree. I'd also say that although you and the audience know it, the cops don't know it. So everyone he's working with doesn't know his past, doesn't know he worked at the CIA, which obviously would change their perception of him enormously. So that's something that we play with in terms of keeping it a secret from them, and Lizzie getting involved in that also because I think that her boss, the lieutenant, would have a very different take on the information they're getting if she knew where they were getting it from.
It was such a privilege seeing you in Macbeth, and I'd love to see you on stage again. Is there a project that you have coming up, or is there something that you're really eyeing to play in the future on Broadway?
Well, we're waiting to see if this goes again, so that kind of makes my long-term planning rather difficult. But so if that's the case, then we'd start shooting again in July. But I do my concerts. I did a show. I'm doing a new show called Alan Cumming, Legal Immigrant. And it's a sort of like a cabaret show. My last one was called Alan Cumming Sings Sappy Songs. And I'm doing a really great thing, actually. We're doing some shows on tour. But then in June, we're doing 2 weeks here in New York. And because with the last show, I began it at the Café Carlyle, which is this, an amazing sort of historical cabaret space to play at. But it's very expensive. And then we did Carnegie Hall, which is also, of course, an incredible thing. But I was just like, none of my friends can afford to come and see me doing this thing. So then I finished it in December at Joe's Pub, and we did a few nights at Joe's Pub. So now with the new one, with Legal Immigrant, I'm doing this great thing, and I can't quite believe they let me, is that we're doing an 8:45 show at Café Carlyle and then a midnight show at Joe's Pub every night for 2 weeks. So it's kind of like, I feel like I'm a downtown boy living in an uptown world. So that'll be the next thing that I'll be performing here in New York, and some dates throughout around America. But and then after the middle of July, it's kind of all on hold. I've got a few gigs actually on weekends. But there's ones like the Kennedy Center. You can't turn down.
You can't turn down the Kennedy Center.
You know what I mean? So, but in terms of plays, there's a couple of things I'm sort of loosely attached to, and there's definitely people like John. They're talking about Macbeth. Oh, you were John Tiffany, one of the directors of that, who is here in town actually, just directing that Harry Potter play that's coming on. I just love him. We've done a few shows together. He did the Bacchae that I did when I played Dionysus. And I just, I really want to do something with him again. It's been a few years now, and I feel I haven't actually got anything in the works with him. And so I kind of miss that sort of urgency. So, but yeah, it's definitely in my periphery that I'll be back on stage.
Well, we can't wait to see you on a bigger stage again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congrats.
So
there's one more.
One more. Oh.
So this one's for Michael, but Alan, I have to say, you're one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram.
Oh, thanks.
I hope to see you at Club Cummings.
Coming, Inga.
So in terms of writing for a character where you know who the actor is, what would you say are some of the cool parts of that, and anything you need to be mindful of?
I'll answer the second part. I think being mindful of not trying to repeat what you've seen him do before and what you've fallen in love with the actor doing. Mm-hmm. So you're not just going down the easy route. But when I write, I don't think of actors, so I just create a character and follow it. But to be able to have someone in mind and visualize them and have an idea of what their rhythm is, and Alan was talking about not having a process, and I respect that 100%. But someone like with that type of talent, there is a magic that happens, and you watch them because there's something going on that makes you need to watch them, and Alan has that. So to be able to write a character and imagine them in a bespoke tweed suit with a pocket square, and at the same time pull out a gun, I don't think there's a lot of people who could pull that off. So I don't know if I would have had the confidence to do that if I didn't know it was Alan. I imagine Alan dressed like that. In fact, we had this Christmas party at CBS that we didn't have to go to, but you had to go to it. And it happened to be, we happened to be shooting 2 blocks away from the party so that we could get the actors to the party. So we were shooting the finale, and it was really important to get there at a certain time. I just said to Alan, he rapped, I was like, we're still shooting. And I was like, listen, can we get there quickly? Can you just go in your wardrobe? He's wearing like this beautiful suit and these great shoes. And he was like, I'd rather just get in my own clothes. I was like, what's the difference? You're in this beautiful suit. And so he was like, let me just quickly change. So he quickly changes, and all of a sudden, it's a totally different human being. And I forgot that was Alan, with his spiky hair and a t-shirt and these great pants. And so I imagined the other guy, and Alan became that guy. And so it just became a much more enjoyable way to think about it. Do you write?
No.
Oh.
I'm just
you're just trying to figure out, when you're coming up with a character, all these little different parts of them. And when you have a head start, especially this type of head start, it makes it much more enjoyable.
And I think it's funny as well that I feel I sound and look very different to the person you saw earlier on the screen, we haven't shot it. We finished in December, so it's like a couple of months now, a few months away from it. I've done other things in between. It's actually crazy. Like just today, doing talk shows, they play little clips, of the show. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's funny. I forgot about that. And actually, that when you're in it, it's so easy and kind of, you're just that person, and you know that you have all these traits and you have all these things, and actually standing apart from it, it's sort of, you look back and you think, I don't know, can't remember what that was like. So actually, but the great thing about this character, I feel, is that there's so many, the sort of multitude of different layers is actually something I'm really looking forward to going back to explore more. Like, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of stuff that we could do, and that's really exciting to me, that to go back and try and do that.
He's very stuffy in the show, and it just brings so much comedy to see him be stuffy and unhappy about when things don't go his way. And it's so unlike how he is in real life that you just want to keep writing to it, because it's so absurd to get to see him do that.
Yeah. And then when we dance, we have this thing where there was there's probably about 3 cameras all going at once, and they have the dolly, the thing that push like that, and they have these little, like Alexa, or what's the Google version?
Google Home.
What?
Google Home.
Google Hum?
Google Home.
Home, I see. Google Hum. Bit of a Google Hum. Well, anyway, so imagine a Google Home on the dolly, and in between takes we would dance, just dance like crazy, the whole crew. Sometimes to keep warm, but just on the sound stages, that'd be our thing. We'd just be like, and you could tell different directors who were coming in were like, what's going on? They'd come up to give me a note, and I'm like, yeah, what? Oh, sure, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, right, okay. And it was a really great thing, because also I loved when people would post things of it, to see me and Bayana, and in the police station, for example, me dressed in my sort of fuddy-duddy way, rocking out to Black Box from 1998. It's really fun, and I think that's the thing, you've got to try and be both things, go straight for that character, but also retain your own self, and and again, that's also a thing about the crew, making the crew feel that everyone joins in, everyone does the same thing, and everyone feels good about coming to work. Because there's not many shoots I've been on where the leading actor kind of demands that you dance between takes. Or you're fired.
Hi, I need to ask you about The Good Wife.
Okay.
So big fan of the series, and of course Eli. I want to ask you, how do you feel about the show ending? And also, will we see Eli on the spin-off? Because I know his daughter is there, Melissa, but will we see you in the second season?
No, is the answer. There was talk of it, but just some technical issues happened. I feel like, I think there's a thing in America where people aren't good about ending things. And I think it's all about sort of, when something's a success, you just should whip it until it falls, or you jump the shark. That's what you call it, doesn't it? So I felt like when The Good Wife ended, I thought it was the perfect time for it to end. I thought the arc of the story was great. It was the creators who were still working on the show who did that and ended it how they wanted. It wasn't kind of just, in a funny way, I feel like, on television, especially on network television, what you're doing is just making stuff to fill up the gaps between the commercials. So when you have a chance to actually really craft something, I think part of the craft is to kill it as well. Or to end it. Maybe kill's the wrong word. So I was actually really glad that The Good Wife finished. I was ready to go as well, and I felt I was going to leave, and then they told me they were ending it, so I stayed for the last season. So that was great. But then when this spin-off thing came up, the Good Fight, and I knew they were going to do that, I was like, oh, that's nice. But then, actually, when we were shooting our show, a lot of the people were in the same sound stage, and some of the same crew had been working on it. And I was like, oh, so what's happening? And, oh, really? Oh. And my daughter's in it. Oh, really? What, did they mention me ever? Did they mention Eli? It's kind of funny. It got me all going again. And actually, that would be quite funny to go back and do Eli.
All right, well, in our last minute or two, without giving away too many spoilers, can you just let us know what we should expect from this season of Instinct?
At one point, I shoot a glass of poisoned iced tea out of Whoopi Goldberg's hand, thereby saving her life. How's that?
That is the perfect way to end this. I can't wait to see it.
That's basically it.
Please give everyone a round of applause for our two guests.